And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Festival of Enterprise webinar this morning. We've got a special guest today, Antony Hylton from Zoinomics, part of a partnership with ACER, one of our sponsors. And today's webinar is going to be all about how you work from home. And Antony is going to go through some really simple tips about how you can improve your posture while working at home to make sure that you're looking after yourself and making sure you're not causing yourself any long-term injuries. So I'm not going to hold you guys too long. I'm going to hand you over to Antony and we'll get the webinar started. Thank you, Antony.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for joining, guys. Just very briefly, my background. I'm a physiotherapist by trade, qualified back in 2001, and did the NHS bit and worked in various places since then. Then around 2010, I began working in this field of ergonomics and occupational health. Probably the last 8-9 years, I've been working pretty much full-time in this field of office ergonomics. So do lots of workstation assessments and assisting businesses and corporations in terms of managing the health and safety of their workers, particularly around, obviously, computer use. So today, ACER asked me, I went to ACER and we did a talk about posture and things like that and keeping well when at work. And they said, can you come and do something for this Festival of Enterprise on remote working? Because, of course, many people now are working from home and there are various challenges associated with that, including from a postural perspective and a musculoskeletal perspective. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. The first question I want to pose is, how important is posture? So is it really important for us to have an ideal posture all the time? Or is it maybe a little bit overrated? So we'll get into that a little bit. To start off with, I just want to put it into context in terms of musculoskeletal pain. Now, some of you may have back pain, neck pain, arm pain and such. And we typically think of pain in terms of the physical load. So if we're sitting in a suboptimal position for a sustained period and we start to feel pain on our back, we naturally assume it's because we're in that position. So the physical load on the muscle, the tendons, the tissues is what's causing us pain. But of course, pain is a bit more complex than that. And what we know about pain is that stress, anxiety, and emotion have a big impact on the pain that we experience. The other thing, of course, is that as we get older, we feel more pain. And our levels of fitness, we know that the fitter we are generally, the less pain we experience. So consider things, not only how you're sitting and your and the physical load on your body, but think about things that stress and anxiety, other aspects of your role that may be putting additional pressure on you, which can contribute to our pain experience. And also, are we fit? Are we exercising? Are we doing the right things to look after ourselves and therefore manages our pain? So let's talk a little bit about posture. First of all, what is bad posture? So bad posture can be defined as an habitual, self-imposed positioning that causes physical stress, especially coping poorly with postural challenges. So self-imposed because we choose to go in that position and puts a load on our body. Now, postural challenges are things that are going to be particularly prevalent in the home environment. So, for example, if you're working on a dining room table, sitting on a dining room chair, maybe you're just using a laptop on a surface so your head is in that forward bent laptop position for sustained periods. These are the postural challenges. And if we start to experience difficulties because of that, then we can consider that bad posture. Otherwise, is there such thing as bad posture? So what I often hear is that people say to me, I have a scoliosis, or I have increased thoracic kyphosis, or lumbar lordosis, and all these kind of descriptors which describe how the spine, the shape of the spine and the curves of the spine have been altered in my individual case, and that is the cause of pain. Well, there's no evidence to suggest that is the case. So people have a slight scoliosis or a more curve in their lower back or increased curve in their upper thoracic spine. There's no research that says that people that have these bad postures have more incidence of back pain compared to people that don't have those things. So defining bad posture is the first thing. And what I would say is that it's purely related to how we're sitting at any given time. And is that causing us discomfort? If it's not, then it's not necessarily a bad posture. What we do know, in fact, is that our thoughts, our experiences, our beliefs, stress, poor or lack of sleep, lack of exercises, all these things are far more likely to cause long-term back pains and discomfort than any postural change, any postural abnormalities, if you like, that we may or may not have. So when you go to somebody and they say, oh, you've got a flat thoracic spine, or you have a misaligned spine. These aren't necessarily causes of the difficulties. In fact, there's lots of other factors. What we do know is that the longer we spend in one sustained posture, the more likely we are to experience discomfort. And some research shows that after about 90 minutes seems to be that threshold at which we start to experience lower back and hip discomfort. So we want to be moving regularly. The key is really moving. The best posture is the next posture. You may have heard that phrase before, but it's about that change in position. So whether or not you've got an ideal setup, or you are sitting on a sofa surfing, or working on the bed, or working in a suboptimal environment in terms of postural challenges, then the most important thing is that we're moving regularly, finding ways within your job to move regularly. And that's not just about musculoskeletal strain and pain, but it's also about our general health and well-being, right? We've all heard of the ills of sitting. If we sit for too long, it causes long-term health issues. We know that there seems to be a cut-off point around that 10 to 11 hours, where if you're sitting for more than that amount of time during the whole day, so that includes sitting at home in the morning, sitting at home in the evening, our commute time. If your whole day involves more than 10 to 11 hours of sitting, then your risk of cardiovascular disease as we get older and other conditions significantly increases. So we want to try to reduce our overall sitting time. And in that context, trying to stand and move around more regularly is really important. More so, in fact, than any strain that might be on our back or hips. So taking breaks, obviously, is really important. And I'm sure you've been told this before. I'm sure it's intuitive, isn't it, that we need to take breaks. Just a little bit on the research around breaks. We know that for tasks that are fairly labor intensive, but not necessarily requiring high levels of creative input, so data input, audio typing, call center work, things like that, breaks are really useful. So not only do they help in terms of employee satisfaction, but actually they can increase productivity. So people that if you give people breaks when they have that type of work, then productivity actually goes up, which may be counterintuitive. What we don't know, and research is not there, is looking at other professions where you have to kind of be in more of a flow state. So if you think about software development and coding, if we think about art, maybe design work where you have to be in a zone, then we know that breaking that flow state can actually reduce productivity because it just breaks that focus and causes distraction. So we're not sure how that impacts productivity, but I think intuitively we know that sometimes if we get stuck mentally, it's a good time to go out, maybe get a walk, get a fresh coffee or a drink, and move around more regularly. So something to think about. It's really important to take breaks, but in some roles and some tasks, maybe it's not so great. So this is the bit I want to focus on. Now we can talk about pain, we can talk about design and things like that, but really want to focus today on how we're working at and our setup at home. Now, in a second, I'm going to go through working at a dining room table. I often work at my dining room table, and it's not ideal. And the analogy I like to use is this: is imagine if you didn't sleep at home, but in fact you slept in the office. But in the office they had nice beds, nice mattresses, Hypnos mattresses, Temper mattresses, and so you always got a good night's sleep. And then one day they said to you, well, you can't sleep here anymore, you've got to go sleep at home. But unfortunately, you don't have a bed at home, you don't have a sleep environment at home. So what do? Well, it's okay, I'm going to be back in the office in a few weeks. I'll just sleep on the sofa for a while. Of course, for a short period, sleeping on a sofa may be okay, but over a period of time, that's going to cause lots of problems. It's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your musculoskeletal health because sofas aren't designed for sleeping. So the same thing can apply to a task chair, to an ergonomic chair that you may have in the office that you're not necessarily using at home. So you can sit on a dining room chair. It's fine. You can make adaptations, which we're going to talk about in a second. But ultimately, if it's going to be something that you're doing for 8 to 10 hours a day, long term, then you really need to invest in something that's designed for that kind of use, such as an ergonomic task chair. I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of chairs at the moment. Feel free to ask questions about those things or message me and we can get into that if you want to. But for now, let's just talk about what we do when we don't have a task chair at home. So thinking about a good computer DSC display screen setup when we're working from home. Number one is to make sure the chair has some cushioning. Now, as I say, dining room chairs aren't designed for long-term use, primarily because they don't really have very good cushioning. They're designed for sitting for maybe half an hour to an hour. You need to have a chair with decent cushion. If you are using a dining room chair, then you might want to supplement the cushion on the chair with an additional cushion or pillow. The height of the chair is very important because number one, you want to make sure your feet are on the floor if you're particularly petite. The other thing is the height of the seats relative to the desktop. So if you're sitting in a position where the height of the seat doesn't allow your arms to come to the top of the desktop, then obviously you're going to be hunching your shoulders when you're typing and operating your mouse. And the last thing to think about with a chair is the degree of recline. Now, if you've got a chair that happens to have a nice 10 to 20 degree recline, then great. If it's not that and you can't adjust it, then maybe you're going to be pushed forward too much, or maybe you're in too much of a recline, and that's going to affect the position of your head and neck and shoulders, because you're going to be slumping forward and your head's going to be forward. Again, I'll show you some pictures in a second that illustrate that. Apart from the chair, we've got to think about the height and the position of your screen. Now, very often in homes, people are using laptops directly on the surface, and we know that a 45-degree angle looking down at the laptop puts a big strain on the discs in the neck. Research has shown that at a 60-degree angle, the pressure in the disc in the neck is 5 times greater than it is with the head and neck in neutral. Now, people can say, well, so what? What's the consequence of that? Well, we don't really know what the consequences that are, to be honest. But we do know that will increase muscle tension and tone, and that will lead to discomfort. So whether or not there are long-term consequences of that in terms of joint damage, we don't know. But we do know that it's putting more pressure, and over time, then we kind of probably want to try to avoid that. So where should the screen be? Ideally, you want top of the screen at eye level. So raising your screen, your laptop is really important, or ideally using a full-size screen instead. In terms of mouse and keyboard, they just need to be separate from the laptop so that you can operate them and have the screen in the right position. So this is me sitting at home at my dining room table, and you can see the chair is fairly small for me. I'm 6'6" tall. You can see the chair is not providing support fully to my thighs, and neither is it providing support to my lower back. The thing I want you to focus on mostly is the pelvis position and the thigh position. You can see when the thigh is flat, and the pelvis is tilted backwards, then the lumbar spine is flat. And what we have in the back is we have a nice curve in the lower back we really want to try to maintain. So if I come to the next picture, you can see if I bring my thigh angle downwards, what that does, it rotates my pelvis forwards, and that helps me to maintain this lumbar curve. Now, that's great, but then there's no support to the back anymore. And if I can maintain that, if I'm strong enough to maintain that for sustained periods, then great, but it's very highly unlikely unless I'm a ballet dancer or a gymnast. So what I want to do is just add some cushion into that to support that. So having a slight downward thigh angle rotates the pelvis forward, which helps us to maintain that nice lumbar lordosis or lumbar curve. And then supplementing that with a cushion can really help. So even though the chair is not great, the height isn't perfect for my thigh length, the cushion isn't great, I'm not getting support to the upper back, I can still achieve a relatively neutral posture just by adding a cushion and tucking my legs underneath slightly. Now this might look familiar. So even with the cushion in the back, if I'm using a laptop, then naturally I'm going to be tilted forward. I'm going to stoop in my spine. My head's going to be in that downward position. And straight away you can see that over time that's going to put some pressure on my spine. So as I mentioned at the beginning, what I want to do is make sure that the laptop is raised to eye level. So on the top of the screen, roughly eye level, so that we're looking down slightly. A slight downward gaze reduces strain on the eyes. And then you've got a separate keyboard and mouse. So even without an ideal task chair, even without an ideal work surface, working on a dining room table, I can achieve a fairly reasonable posture just with a simple laptop stand and a keyboard and mouse. So you don't even need a laptop stand. Any method of raising your screen will suffice. It's just about getting that screen up to a comfortable height. Now, I'm not going to sit with my legs tucked underneath me for any sustained periods, because that's going to put pressure on my knees and on the back of my thighs. So I'm going to have my legs forward a bit. And again, it goes back to that best posture is next posture. Ideally, stand up and move around. But if you can't do that, then at least change position in sitting so that we're not putting pressure on our spine and on our legs for sustained periods. What if I don't have a laptop stand? Is there anything else I can do? Well, I can use a cushion which raises it up slightly. We know that even if we can't raise the screen up fully, even just raising it up slightly will reduce our head and neck angle somewhat, which helps us put it into a slightly better position. It's not ideal. It means that because we're in these suboptimal positions, we've got these postural challenges, we need to take more breaks to compensate, but ultimately this will be better than having the laptop on the desk. In this position, what I've done is just moved myself a little bit closer, moved the laptop back slightly, and just rested my elbows. So I've got somewhere for my elbows to rest. Again, the laptop screen would ideally be higher. If I don't have the amenity to raise that screen and have a separate mouse and keyboard, then this is something that it's a temporary measure, if you like. And these are some other postures that you might want to adopt. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that any of these are good postures and that you should be doing any of these for any sustained periods. But for example, when the lockdown started, I decided I'm going to do some gardening. And in doing the gardening, my back was starting to ache because I hadn't gardened for years. And so my back was sore, so I decided to lie on the sofa and I was going to do some work on the sofa, which is picture number 1. You can see that my back is supported, my head is in a relatively neutral position, and my arms are supported. So it's not ideal. I'm not going to spend more than 10 to 15 minutes in that position, but it's an alternative. Similar with number 2, just having the laptop raised slightly, not ideal, but it's better than an alternative. Number 3 is if you want to call and you've got a wireless headset, then stand and move around on a call. Any opportunity you can grab to build not sitting into your working day, then you should definitely do so. And then number 4, if you've got some emails to do, can you do it on your phone potentially? Again, just adopting a different posture. The best posture is the next posture. That's me. The last thing I wanted to talk about, just before we talk about exercises, number 1, if you are going to be sitting for a sustained period, you're going to be working from home for a long period. The number 1 thing that people find useful is to have a separate space. Now, depending where you live, if you're in London, if you're in a flat, or if you're in a very small home, then it's going to be difficult for you necessarily to find a space that you can isolate and shut the door on. But that's something that is really important and really helps in terms of a successful work from home. The other thing is, as I said earlier on, if you are going to be working from home full time, then really want to invest in a task chair. Now you can adopt some of those strategies that I just mentioned, but ultimately, if you don't have the right equipment, then it is going to be difficult to sustain that and be productive and be pain-free for a long time. Just want to give a quick shout out to our Chartered Society of Physiotherapy that govern us. On their website, there's some great stuff, some great information in terms of exercises you can do at your desk. So if you just go onto the csp.org.uk, look for public patient and then desk-based exercises, then you can find some exercises and things you can do in there. But to be honest with you, those are great. But if you're not doing general exercise at the moment, then that's probably the most important things, that you get outside, maybe get a bike, go for a ride, go for a little jog. Even just walking outside is really useful. Just get out and do something. And that's it. So if you've got any questions, then I'm here to ask them.
Well, Antony, that was really useful. Thank you very much for that. I think Alan, who's watching in, has talked about sort of the Apple Watch and how that helps notify people when they need to be actually get up and do some exercises. Sorry?
Alexa.
Yeah.
Alexa, remind me to take a break in 20 minutes. And then it's going to shout at you to take breaks. There's loads of tools nowadays just to kind of to use in terms of break reminders. I don't know if anyone's heard of the Pomodoro technique. There's Pomodoro time you can get, which encourage you to work for 25 minutes and then have a 5 minutes of shallow time. So 5 minutes focus work followed by 25 minutes focus work followed by 5 minutes of shallow time. I use that and find it really useful in terms of A, being able to focus, and then B, allowing myself that time to move and take that little break.
Yeah. So I've got a question here: is how do you select the right height for your chair? So in terms of, I think what they're trying to ask is how high should your chair be in relative to the table, to the desk?
So when you're sitting back with your shoulders back into the chair, your forearm and your shoulders relaxed, your forearms should be level with the top of the work surface. So if your elbows are below the desk, then you need to have your chair slightly higher. If you find yourself reaching down slightly, then you're slightly too high and you want to lower down a little bit. So but most dining room tables are slightly higher than a standard chair. Standard desk in the office. So most people end up being slightly too low, because the dining room chair is a little bit low as well. So you end up having to use cushions to raise yourself up a little bit. But yeah, you want the top of the arms to be at the top of the work surface.
Okay, so would you recommend having an external screen if using a laptop?
So it depends on the type of work. So if you're working on big spreadsheets, so you need more space on the screen, then obviously a laptop is a finite size. So it depends on the size of the screen that you need. If you're working just on documents, if you're an author, for example, you just literally write documents, the laptop's fine as long as it's raised to the right position. But if you're working on big spreadsheets or other things that require more data to be on the screen, then largely, because what will happen on a smaller laptop is you'll simply just start to lean towards it, particularly as your eyes fatigue towards the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's going to impact your posture. So it's just depends on what you're doing. But as a general rule of thumb, if you can get a larger screen, it's better. A larger screen further away puts less strain in your eyes than a smaller screen closer.
Looks like Alan needs to reprogram his Alexa. It seems to be following your.
Oh.
Sorry, Alan. Just put Alexa's listening to what we're saying and has set a reminder for him to take a break.
Excellent.
So another question from Alan here. What about streaming your work over to a TV with big screen?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's really good for video conference calls, right? So you can sit on the sofa and you can just AirPlay if you've got an Apple or Mac or stream it across to you and that way, and just put your laptop in. My daughter was doing some online dance classes, and so we put the laptop in front of the TV so the camera could see her, and then she just watch it on the TV. So it's anything where you can kind of get out of that chair and go sit somewhere else and do something different and change position, it is a good thing. And of course that reduces eye strain as well. You're not looking at the screen all the time. So, yeah, great idea.
Fab. We've got Simon here from London. He's asking, he wants to know more about the tech. What sort of tech is there that people can look at purchasing when it comes to trying to improve your workstation at home? So
I mean, there's the main thing is the two things. So number one, have a flat surface you can work on. And I know that sounds really straightforward at the dining room table, but some people working in homes where they're sharing these spaces, so don't even have a surface to work on. So you need to have a desk, a table of some sort. The next thing, of course, is the chair. So you can spend anywhere from £100 to £1,000 for a chair, and the more you spend, the higher quality it's going to be. But it's whatever your budget is. If you can afford a decent chair, then great. If you can afford a height adjustable work surface, so that you can get these desktop devices that go up and down, or you can get electric height adjustable desks that allow you to work in standing. So anything you can do which reduces your sitting time, that's the key. Now, if you do have a good chair, then obviously you can sit for longer. But ultimately, for me, sitting less is better than sitting better, if that makes sense. So you can get the height adjustable work surfaces. You can get them from anywhere from £200 to about £500, and even the desks now come down to around the £400 mark. But it depends on your space that you have available. That's really one of the key factors in terms of working from home. Is how much space do you have? Do you have space to put a desk and a chair in? And if you don't, then it's kind of working around that, really.
Sue is asking, how long do you think people will be working from home, and is this the future?
Yeah, yes, we will. I think it is the future. I know some of my biggest clients, they're starting to come back in September, but they're coming back with 50% of the workforce is re-entering the office. And half of them are going to be working from home on a permanent basis now. And these are big companies in the city. So at least two of my businesses that two of my clients have said this is what we're doing from now on. I think what's happened over this time is that people have developed, or companies have developed a trust in their staff. So where before people didn't want staff to work from home, partly because they weren't sure if they could monitor their productivity. Now they've seen that they've had to work from home. Oh, guess what? They've been productive while they've been there. And actually saving us on office space. So it's not a bad thing for us to get. Now, there are implications in terms of if I'm now going to be working from home, I'm using some of my home, my real estate, to work. So there's lots of implications around that. However, to answer the question, I think we're going to be working from home at least the rest of the year, I would imagine. Who knows how the pandemic's going to continue? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And then long term, I think there will be a significantly higher proportion of the workforce that will be choosing to work from home and then be asked to work from home by their employers. Definitely.
Okay, one here from Karen, which is, as an employee of an organization, what rights do I have when it comes to requesting office furniture? She's put, what rights do I have when it comes to requesting office furniture while working at home?
That's a really tricky one because the health and safety law. So at the start of this pandemic, what happened was the health and safety executive that governed things like the display screen equipment regulations, that the health and safety part of the Health and Safety at Work Act, put on their websites that employers do not have to do display screen equipment assessments because this is a temporary situation. Well, of course, it's not temporary anymore, but they haven't necessarily updated that guidance. So companies don't have a legal obligation at the moment to do home assessments and make adjustments, which is kind of crazy. I think that will change shortly because this is no longer a temporary situation, clearly. So hopefully that will change. In other countries, it's obvious, it's clear. In Finland, in Sweden, etc., the employer is responsible for you having an ergonomic setup, whether you're working from home or wherever you're working. In this country, we're not as far ahead as that. And so the onus really is on the business. I mean, you talk to your business, talk to whoever the HR, and just say, listen, I'm struggling at home. Can I get some support? And then hopefully, if they're smart, they'll support you in that. But I think the best companies are starting to look at this now and develop a strategy, because of course it's not just about an individual, it's about a large portion of the workforce that they need to support, and of course they need to figure out the budgets and the procurement around that.
Definitely. I think Alan's just touched on another point that, you know, some people like working from home, some people hate working from home. Me personally, I hate working from home because I need a different environment. I need a work environment and I need a home environment. And I think, you know, that trying to mix the two and amalgamate the two into one is very difficult for certain individuals, especially if you're outgoing, you like to socialize, that sort of thing. So, you know, it's interesting. We're in a very interesting time. So, you know, let's see where we go to. So I've been working from home and I'm starting to feel the fatigue of sitting in a chair constantly. You know, what can I do to try and improve my day? I've got a busy day, which is constantly on calls. I've tried other options, but it's difficult to take my laptop around. What would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, you're not the only one in that position. It's really commonplace now where people are just, because what happens, we knew before all this started, we knew that people that work from home work longer hours. That was just something that people did anyway. And now a lot of people have been exposed to this. In fact, that you don't get that commute time back. Actually, you work during that commute time. People starting work earlier and finishing work later. You've got to delineate your home time and your work time. And so that might involve a conversation and saying, my workload is not allowing me to have that work time and home times. You've got to have a routine. You've got to start at a certain time. You've got to finish at a certain time. You've got to have your lunch break. These are things that you just have to insist on. And easier for me to say, easier said than done. But it is about trying to be rigid and be disciplined about taking those break times and having a start time and a finish time. Now, the other thing is when you're working from home, it's people that have a space work from home a lot more effectively. So a room you can go and close the door on, or even just a corner of your room that you can maybe draw a curtain around, and this is my workspace. Because when I leave that area now, I'm back at home. My work-life balance is not so blurred. But if you don't have that space, then it's really challenging. Personally, I try to get out, go for a run at least once a day. I'll go to my daughter's room because she's got a desk and a chair and a computer. So I'll ask her, can I be in your room for 2 hours so that I can focus for a couple of hours? And I try to make sure that the work that I have to do that requires high levels of focus, I'll try and do it in that time. And then other work, which is like emails, etc., then I'll do it other times. So it's navigating that home environment and doing the best you can, and then talking to your employer and getting support where you can, where it's available.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Anthony. I think one last question we've got here is there an app or a Windows program that you can use that automatically notifies you when you've been working for too long?
There are, yes. So for Windows, what's it called? There's Sirocco Take a Break. There is RSI Guard. There is what's the other one called? There's another one that's. If you go, Sirocco Take a Break is probably the best one. But yeah, there are a number of them out there. If you just Google break software, the best ones are on the phone actually. Best application. Okay. But there are a number that you can get on the PC as well. What I'll do is on my LinkedIn, I'll put a list of. So if anyone wants to
fabulous, yeah. If you could share it with the audience, then a lot of people can sort of check which ones are best suited to their needs. Yeah. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything. All of the questions that have been asked. I think we've got one here. Suffering neck and back pain as a result of sitting on my kitchen stools. Looking to invest in a chair. But what can I do to relieve the stress and pain that I'm going through at the moment?
Move. Yeah, it's a lot of people now, they just real this sustained periods of working in these suboptimal postures with these postural challenges I mentioned, they're just starting to cause problems now. And it's you've got to move more. You've got to, if you're starting to have aches and pains, anybody that's experiencing neck and back pain when they're sitting should be moving every 20 to 30 minutes at least. And that means getting up, getting to get a cup of tea, and at least every 3 hours going for a walk. Get out of the house, go for a walk. But you can't just continue to sit in those same positions. It's just going to cause you long-term issues. So, I mean, if there's even therapists and things, the physios are struggling to get back to work now. So you can't even go and just get a massage. It's not as simple as that anymore. But it's really thinking about, okay, I'm going to be here long-term. What can I do to improve my ergonomic setup? I need to invest in a chair. I need to make sure that I'm not putting myself in these postures. But in the meantime, you've got to sit less and move more. It sounds really simple, but that's the answer. You know, you've got to get outside and move and stretch. There's lots of.
Are there any specific exercises? I think our audience are looking for you to do a bit of yoga on screen for them, or something. You know, show them some special exercise that's going to crack those knots in their back.
As I say, you go to the CSP website, but I'll give you one that's really, really good for the neck and the shoulders. I'll just turn around. I'll show you this one. So if you just sit back in your chair,
yeah,
and essentially what you want to do is make sure your eyes stay level. If you can see me, your eyes stay level and your chin stays level, so you don't tip your head up and bring it down, but just bring your head back. So you're giving yourself a bit of a double chin.
Yeah. And
if you want, you can put a little bit of pressure, and you should feel the real stretch on the back here. Now, if you've got neck and back problems, that will be quite uncomfortable and fairly painful. But just doing that gently will help just stretch those neck, because we spend so much time in this position. That's the problem. And so we want to undo that by doing the opposite, which is this one. So that's one. But if you go on the CSP website, there's loads. Honestly, I get back pain if I've been sitting for a while. I don't do any specific stretches. I just go for a run. I come back, my back pain's gone. You know, it's that movement. Your body needs movement. We're designed to move, and we're not moving enough. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's just trying to move. This is why I sit stand working and as I say in Finland, in Scandinavia, sit stand working is everywhere. Everyone does it. We're a bit behind the curve on that, and I think we need to start to think about that more and how let's not sit so much. It's not good for us.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's it from everyone. We haven't got any more questions. Is there anything you want to end on, Antony?
No, that's great. I mean, if you go to Zoinomics.com, there's lots of information. There's some blogs on there. If you want to discuss chairs or ask me about anything specific in terms of chairs, just send me a message. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the usual, Twitter, etc. Just go to Zoinomics. Feel free. I'm happy to discuss things and give you any advice I can give.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Antony. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's looking a bit grey outside, but hopefully it will. The sun will come out for the weekend, and hope you all have a great weekend. And join us next week for some more fantastic webinars and some really, really amazing advice today. So thank you very much, Antony. Take care.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.